The scream tears from your throat before you even understand why. Your naked body hits the frozen ground at -40 degrees, and every nerve ending explodes in agony. This isn't hypothermia creeping in over hours. This is your cells literally beginning to freeze on contact. Welcome to Earth, 20,000 years ago. The last glacial maximum, a world where 30% of the planet is buried under ice sheets 2 miles thick, where short-faced bears the size of small cars hunt in daylight, where the average global temperature has plummeted 11 degrees Fahrenheit, and winter never truly ends. You have exactly 24 hours to prove you're as tough as your ancestors. Spoiler alert, you're not. And in this frozen hellscape, that's a death sentence written in ice. Your eyes snap open to a world that shouldn't exist. The sun hangs low and pale, struggling through an atmosphere choked with 25 times more dust than you've ever breathed. Each intake of air burns your lungs with cold, so intense it feels like drowning in liquid nitrogen. This is Earth at the last glacial maximum, and you've just become another potential casualty. The landscape stretching before you defies comprehension. Where forests should stand, only frozen steppes extend to the horizon. The Laurentide ice sheet looms in the distance, a wall of ice reaching 10,000 feet into the sky, covering 13 million square kilometers. It's not white, it's blue-black, ancient and advancing imperceptibly toward everything living. The ground beneath your bare feet isn't soil, it's permafrost, frozen solid for thousands of years. The few patches of exposed earth are concrete hard, littered with rocks that could have been tools in the right hands, but your soft, modern hands, they're already turning purple. Wind hits you like a physical assault. This isn't the gentle breeze of your climate-controlled world. Katabatic winds, supercooled air flowing down from the ice sheets, can reach 200 miles per hour. Today's gust is merely 60 miles per hour. But with the temperature at -20 Fahrenheit, the wind chill plunges to -55. Your skin cells are beginning to die. Scientists studying deep ice cores know this world's brutal statistics. Global temperatures have crashed to 46 degrees Fahrenheit, 11 degrees colder than your time. But those are averages. Here, where ice sheets dominate the horizon, winter temperatures routinely hit -40, sometimes -60. The cold isn't just uncomfortable, it's a predator. You scan desperately for shelter for anything familiar. There are no buildings, no roads, no signs of the civilization your brain expects. Instead, you see moving shadows in the distance, large ones. Your primitive brain, the path that kept your ancestors alive, floods your system with adrenaline, because those shadows have been watching you since you arrived. The very air seems hostile. Lower atmospheric pressure makes each breath less effective. The dust, loess, scientists will later call it, coats your throat, your nose, infiltrates everything. This is rock flour, ground to powder by advancing glaciers, picked up by ferocious winds, and deposited everywhere. It's in your eyes now, scratching, blinding. You're naked, alone, and have just entered the most hostile environment humanity ever conquered. Your ancestors lived here, thrived here, for thousands of years. They built cultures, created art, raised children in this frozen hell. You have 24 hours to survive what they endured for lifetimes. The clock started the moment your skin touched the permafrost. And that tingling in your fingers, that's not cold anymore. That's the beginning of frostbite. Your modern body is failing you catastrophically. Within 3 minutes of exposure, your skin temperature has plummeted from 91 degrees Fahrenheit to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. The blood vessels in your extremities are constricting violently, trying to preserve core warmth. But here's the cruel irony. You're built for the African savanna, not this frozen wasteland. Unlike the Neanderthals who dominated these lands before, you lack every crucial cold adaptation. Your nose is narrow, inefficient at warming frigid air before it hits your lungs. Each breath is agony, crystallizing moisture in your airways. Neanderthals had wide, projecting noses that preheated air. You're essentially breathing razor blades. Your body shape betrays your tropical ancestry. Long limbs, a lean build, perfect for dissipating heat in Africa, catastrophic for retaining it here. The surface area to volume ratio that kept your ancestors cool is now bleeding warmth into the Arctic air at a lethal rate. You're losing 40% more heat than a cold-adapted human would. Shivering starts within 5 minutes. Violent, uncontrollable spasms as your muscles attempt to generate heat. But this emergency response burns through your glucose reserves at 10 times the normal rate. Modern humans carry maybe 1,600 calories of quick access energy. In this cold, that's 4 hours of shivering. Then your body starts eating itself. Your brain, that marvel of evolution, becomes your greatest liability. It demands 20% of your body's energy just to function normally. In extreme cold, it selfishly hoards even more, stealing warmth from your extremities. Your fingers are already numb. In another 10 minutes, they'll be white and waxy. First stage frostbite claiming territory. Brown adipose tissue, the specialized fat that generates heat in cold-adapted mammals, is virtually absent in your body. Babies have it. Arctic peoples retained more. You, maybe 50 grams, mostly dormant. It's like trying to heat a house with a birthday candle while Arctic winds howl through broken windows. Your kidneys kick into overdrive. Cold diuresis, scientists call it. The desperate need to urinate in extreme cold as your body jettisons fluid to reduce the volume it must keep warm. But you're already dehydrating from the dry air, and now you're losing more precious water. Catch 22. Stay hydrated and freeze faster, or dehydrate and die slower. Pain signals flood your nervous system. Your feet, those soft, shoe-pampered appendages, scream with each step on frozen ground. No calluses, no conditioning. The Gravettian hunters whose footprints archaeologists find had feet like leather. Yours are bleeding already, leaving red marks on the permafrost. Your immune system, evolved for fighting familiar pathogens, has no idea what to do here. White blood cell production is crashing. Wounds won't heal properly in this cold. That tiny cut on your heel from a sharp rock, in your world, it's nothing. Here, it's a potential death sentence. No antibiotics, no bandages. Just bacteria you've never encountered, and a body too cold to fight them. The cruelest betrayal? Your metabolism. Ice Age humans needed 4,500 calories daily just to maintain body temperature. Your modern metabolism, efficient from centuries of agricultural abundance, can't ramp up fast enough. You're a Prius in a world that demands a diesel engine. Your body temperature has dropped 2 degrees. At 95 degrees Fahrenheit, mild hypothermia sets in. Decision-making deteriorates. Coordination fails. And this is just the beginning of your body's systematic shutdown in the face of the Ice Age's brutal mathematics. 50 minutes have passed. Your core temperature reads 94 degrees Fahrenheit and falling. The shivering that racked your body has evolved into something more sinister. Violent whole-body convulsions that feel like seizures. Your muscles are literally tearing themselves apart trying to generate heat. Each spasm is agony, but stopping means death. Your hands are useless clubs now. Fine motor control vanished at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. You couldn't tie a knot if your life depended on it. And it does. Those Ice Age humans who survived. They could braid rope from sinew with fingers nearly frozen. You can't even make a fist anymore. The confusion hits like a drug. Simple thoughts scatter like ice crystals in wind. Where are you? Why are you so cold? The urge to lie down becomes overwhelming. Your brain, oxygen-starved from constricted blood vessels, whispers seductive lies. Just rest for a moment. The ground looks warm. This is how hypothermia hunts, not with violence, but with sweet deception. Your speech would be slurred if anyone could hear you. The small muscles controlling your lips and tongue prioritize survival over communication. Paradoxical undressing lurks at the edge of consciousness, that bizarre final stage where victims tear off clothing, convinced they're burning up. The brain's thermostat breaks so completely it reverses reality. Blood retreats from your extremities in waves. Peripheral vasoconstriction, the medical term for your body abandoning your limbs to save your organs. Your feet are marble white, sensation completely gone. In a heated hospital, you might save them. Here, you're watching them die in real time. The umbles have started. Stumbles, mumbles, fumbles, grumbles. Classic hypothermia progression that every wilderness medic knows. Your cerebellum, controlling coordination, operates on temperature margins thinner than paper. At 93 degrees Fahrenheit, you can't walk straight. At 91 degrees Fahrenheit, you can't walk at all. Memory fractures. You can't remember how you got here. Names of loved ones flicker and vanish. Your brain, desperate to conserve energy, shuts down non-essential functions. Complex thought, memory formation, emotional regulation, all luxuries your dying body can't afford. Your breathing has changed. Shallow, rapid gasps as your diaphragm struggles against the cold. Each breath brings more frozen air into lungs already damaged from the temperature differential. Ice crystals form in your airways. Some modern mountaineers know this pain. They have oxygen tanks and heated tents to retreat to. You have nothing. The ground calls to you with increasing urgency. Your muscles burn through the last of their glycogen reserves. Lactate buildup makes every movement torture. Your body is literally running out of fuel, and unlike a machine, it can't simply stop. It must maintain basic functions until the very end. Then, you spot it, a small depression in the ground, partially shielded from wind. Your hypothermic brain sees salvation. Shelter, it whispers. You crawl toward it, each movement a monumental effort. You don't see the massive paw prints surrounding it. You don't smell the musky scent that would have sent your ancestors running. You've just found a short-faced bear's daybed, and in your condition, you can't even process what those fresh tracks mean. 60 minutes in the last glacial maximum, core temperature 93 degrees Fahrenheit and dropping, motor function critically impaired, cognitive ability failing, survival probability approaching 0. And somewhere in the growing twilight, something has caught your scent. The growl vibrates through the permafrost before you hear it. Low, rumbling, like a diesel engine made of meat and malice. Your hypothermic brain struggles to process the sound, but your amygdala, that ancient alarm system, floods your failing body with whatever adrenaline remains. Because 30 feet away, emerging from the twilight, stands a creature that makes grizzly bears look like teddy bears. Octodus simus, the giant short-faced bear, 13 feet of muscle and rage standing on hind legs, scanning with eyes that see you perfectly in the dim light. This isn't some lumbering omnivore. Scientists now know these bears were hyper-carnivores, meat specialists with skulls built for bone-crushing power. At 2,000 pounds, it outweighs the largest modern Kodiak by 400 pounds. And unlike modern bears, this one is built for speed. Those disproportionately long legs aren't a quirk of evolution. They're engineered for pursuit. Paleontologists calculate Arctodus could sustain 30 to 40 miles per hour. Your ancestors could manage maybe 15 miles per hour on this terrain with proper footwear and full motor function. You, in your current state, you can barely crawl. The bear drops to all fours, and that's when true terror sets in. Its shoulders sit higher than your head. The massive skull swings side to side, testing your scent. No fear of humans here. You're not apex predators in this world. You're prey. Easy prey, the kind that can't even run. But the bear isn't alone in considering you dinner. A different sound cuts through the wind. A coughing roar that early humans knew meant death. Panthera spelaea, the cave lion. 25% larger than modern African lions, these killers hunted mammoths. A hypothermic, naked human doesn't even qualify as a challenge. The fossil record tells the brutal truth. At Gualta a Hominidae in Morocco, archaeologists found human bones bearing clear carnivore teeth marks. Humans weren't just occasionally hunted, they were regularly on the menu, and you've stumbled into the kitchen. More shadows materialize. Dire wolves. Not one or two. These hunt in super packs. 30, 40, sometimes 50 individuals working with coordination that would shame military units. Carnisterus had a bite force 129% stronger than modern grey wolves. Those jaws evolved to crack mammoth bones. Your femur would snap like a pretzel stick. The bear moves first, not charging, it doesn't need to. A casual lope that covers ground with terrifying efficiency. Your legs won't respond properly. Muscles cramped from cold and exhaustion fire randomly. You manage 3 stumbling steps before crashing face first into permafrost. That's when you hear the most terrifying sound in the Pleistocene, the whisper-quiet padding of a saber-toothed cat. Smilodon fatalis doesn't roar, doesn't need to. 400 pounds of specialized killing machine with 7-inch sabers designed for one purpose. Severing windpipes. Its jaw can open 120 degrees, wide enough to encompass your entire throat. Your ancestors had fire, weapons, numbers. They'd spent generations learning these predators' patterns, developing strategies, teaching children from birth which shadows meant death. They knew a short-faced bear's daybed meant territory to avoid. Cave lion scratch marks indicated hunting grounds. Dire wolf scat marked pack territories. You have none of this knowledge. Worse, your body's fear response, evolved for quick bursts of escape, is catastrophically failing. Adrenaline can't overcome frozen muscles. Your sprint response demands blood flow your constricted vessels can't provide. You're a Ferrari with no gas, surrounded by perfectly adapted killing machines. The bear reaches you first. Its breath clouds the air, reeking of rotted meat and death. Those massive paws, each the size of a dinner plate, could decapitate you with a casual swipe. But it doesn't attack. Not yet. Because even predators understand economy of effort. Why waste energy killing something that's already dying? They're waiting. All of them. Bear, lions, wolves, saber-teeth. Patient as stone. Because in 20 minutes, maybe less, hypothermia will do their work for them. Then they feast without risk, without effort. Just another frozen carcass on the tundra, another failed evolutionary experiment in a world that swallows weakness whole. Your vision tunnels. Core temperature approaching 91 degrees Fahrenheit. But through the growing darkness, you see more eyes. Always more eyes. Because in the last glacial maximum, you were never alone. You were always surrounded, always watched, always hunted, and always, inevitably, found. Blood trails mark your desperate crawl away from the predators. They follow leisurely, knowing what you're only beginning to understand. Without shelter, you're already dead. The wind has picked up to 70 miles per hour, driving the wind chill to minus 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Exposed human tissue freezes solid in under 3 minutes at this temperature. You've been exposed for 90. Your modern brain screams for buildings, for walls, for anything resembling the shelters you've known. But the last glacial maximum offers only brutal mathematics. Find protection in the next 10 minutes, or become another frozen corpse decorating the permafrost. There, a rock overhang. Your hypothermic mind sees salvation, but your ancestors would see a death trap. That dark stain on the stone. Cave bear scat, still fresh. The scratches reaching 12 feet up the wall. Territory markers. Cave bears killed humans over these shelters. At 1,000 pounds of territorial fury, Ursus Spelaeus didn't share. You need what the Gravettians mastered, a mammoth bone hut, but understanding the engineering brilliance of these structures would break your modern mind. Each required bones from 60 to 149 individual mammoths. The Medjurit shelters used 23 tons of bone, precisely stacked. Skulls formed the base, mandibles created interlocking walls, tusks served as roof supports. These weren't primitive lean-tos. They were architectural marvels requiring generational knowledge. Even if mammoth bones littered the ground, and they don't, you lack everything needed to build. No knowledge of load-bearing angles, no sinew for lashing. Your frozen fingers couldn't manipulate a single bone, let alone engineer a structure to withstand katabatic winds. The strength required just to move a mammoth skull exceeds what your hypothermic muscles can generate. A cave mouth yawns in the hillside. Every instinct screams to enter, but caves meant death as often as salvation. Bears, lions, hyenas, all competed viciously for these shelters. The floor inside would be layered with centuries of predator occupation. Bones of previous human attempts at shelter seeking would crunch under your feet, if you could feel your feet. The wind drives ice crystals horizontally now. Each particle is a tiny knife, stripping skin cells, abrading exposed flesh. Your ancestors wore sophisticated layered clothing that deflected wind. You're naked. The wind chill isn't just stealing heat, it's literally flaying you alive at the microscopic level. Desperation drives a moment of clarity, snow. You could dig a snow cave like modern survival experts teach. But Ice Age snow isn't the fluffy powder of ski resorts. This is wind-packed neve, dense as concrete. Without tools, your bloody fingers scrape uselessly against its surface. Ice Age humans had specialized bone shovels. You have soft hands that tear and bleed with each futile attempt. The permafrost itself mocks your efforts. Frozen earth hard as bedrock extends down 1,500 feet. No burrowing, no digging in. Modern excavators struggle with permafrost. Your fingernails, already separating from their beds due to frostbite, might as well attack granite. Time fragments in your hypothermic state, but the predators tracking you remain patient. They know what you're learning. The Gravettians didn't just find shelter, they created it with technologies that took millennia to develop. Mammoth bone architecture, multi-layered hide coverings, precise smoke hole engineering to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning while preserving heat. You stumble toward a small depression, partially windshielded, not shelter, just marginally less exposed, dying ground. As you collapse, your body making its final involuntary transition to fetal position, a thought flickers through your dying brain. Your ancestors didn't conquer the Ice Age by finding shelter. They conquered it by becoming engineers, architects, and builders in a world actively trying to kill them. They turned bones into homes, transformed death into dwellings, and made the uninhabitable habitable through pure human ingenuity. You'll be lucky if the predators leave enough bones for future archaeologists to puzzle over. Another skeleton in the permafrost. Another reminder that in the last glacial maximum, architecture wasn't art. It was the difference between human history and extinction. Your body temperature has crashed to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The shivering has stopped. A terminal sign that your muscles have exhausted their fuel reserves. In this state, making fire isn't just important, it's the only biological imperative left. But the last glacial maximum doesn't care about your needs. The wind howls at 80 miles per hour now, ripping away any heat your dying body generates. Even if you had fire-making tools, the wind would extinguish sparks before they could catch. Ice Age humans built windbreaks, created microenvironments, understood thermal dynamics. You can barely understand your own name anymore. Your frozen fingers fumble with 2 rocks. In your hypothermic delusion, you remember something about flint and steel. But these aren't flint. They're random glacial erratics. Granite, basalt, useless. Even if you found flint, you'd need iron pyrite for sparks. The nearest deposit? Maybe 200 miles away. Your ancestors knew every stone source within a week's walk. You can't identify basic rock types. Friction fire, the classic survival fantasy. But Ice Age firemakers were specialists who trained from childhood. They knew which woods worked, and most didn't. The spruce and pine dominating this landscape. Resinous, wet, nearly impossible for friction methods. You'd need perfectly dry deadwood, carved into precise shapes with tools you don't have, skills you never learned. Recent archaeological evidence from Ukraine reveals the sophisticated pyrotechnology of 50,000 years ago. Ice Age hearths reached 600 degrees Celsius through careful fuel selection and airflow management. They mixed bone fat with wood, created graded fuel beds, engineered reflection surfaces. You're sitting in 80-mile-per-hour wind, trying to rub wet sticks together with hands that can't feel anything. The cold has penetrated so deep that ice crystals are forming in your blood. Cellular metabolism requires minimum temperatures to function. Below 85 degrees Fahrenheit core temperature, your cells literally can't produce ATP efficiently. You're not just cold, you're shutting down at the molecular level. Even if, through some miracle, you created an ember, then what? Ice Age humans prepared tinder bundles days in advance. Dried fungus, shredded bark, animal hair mixed with pine resin. They carried fire in horn containers filled with slowly smoldering punkwood. You have nothing. The sparse vegetation is frozen solid, moisture content approaching 80%. It would be like trying to light ice cubes. Your ancestors' relationship with fire went beyond mere warmth. They understood combustion temperatures for different woods, smoke patterns for weather prediction, how to build fires that burned for days unattended. The Gravettian hearths archaeologists excavate show engineering prowess. Stone heat reflectors, underground air channels, multi-chamber designs that maximized efficiency. A memory surfaces through your hypothermic fog. Bow drills, you've seen them on survival shows. But those demonstrations use prepared materials in controlled conditions. Here, your hands are clubs. The bow would need sinew or plant fiber cordage, technologies requiring hours of preparation with functional fingers. The spindle must be straight, dry, specific hardness. The hearthboard needs precise wood selection. The notch angle determines success or failure. You're trying to recreate 50,000 years of accumulated pyrotechnic knowledge while your brain dies from cold. The Corman 9 site shows our ancestors could start fires in minutes, maintain them through blizzards, achieve temperatures that could fire pottery. They turned fire from discovery to technology to art form. Your core temperature reads 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Fine motor control is a memory. Complex thought, impossible. In the growing darkness, you see the eyes again. The predators, patient as geology. They know what you're finally accepting. In the last glacial maximum, fire wasn't just warmth. It was the boundary between human and meat, and you've just crossed to the wrong side of that line. Without fire, you're not even food yet. You're just thawing. The cruelest joke of your dying hours surrounds you in every direction. Ice, millions of tons of frozen water, and you're dying of thirst. Your throat burns with dehydration while frost crystals form on your eyelashes. This is the last glacial maximum sadistic paradox. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Your kidneys went into overdrive hours ago. Cold diuresis, the body's panicked response to hypothermia, forced you to urinate repeatedly, dumping precious fluids. Now severe dehydration compounds your hypothermia. Your blood thickens, struggling through constricted vessels like syrup through a straw. Your heart labors against impossible physics. Eating snow. It seems so obvious, but each mouthful would drop your core temperature by 0.1 degrees Fahrenheit. You are at 87 degrees Fahrenheit now, 3 degrees from cardiac arrest. The energy required to melt snow in your stomach would burn calories you don't have. Ice Age humans knew this deadly mathematics. They never ate snow directly. Never. Finding liquid water in the last glacial maximum required expertise modern humans can't fathom. Streams ran only during brief summer melts. Springs emerged at specific geological points your ancestors memorized across generations. They read the landscape like a map. This rock formation meant possible water, that depression collected melt. These plants indicated underground sources. You crawl toward what might be a frozen stream. The ice is 3 feet thick. Without tools, you pound weakly with numb fists. Ice this old is harder than concrete. Your knuckles split and bleed, the blood freezing instantly into red crystals. Even if you broke through, the water below runs at 32.1 degrees Fahrenheit, barely liquid. Drinking it would be like swallowing hypothermia itself. Your ancestors built elaborate water procurement systems. They carved bone tubes to access water through ice holes, created bladder containers that kept water liquid against their bodies, developed specific thawing techniques using heated stones that didn't crack from thermal shock. Technologies refined over millennia, passed parent to child like sacred knowledge. The dehydration symptoms cascade. Your vision blurs, not from cold now, but from your brain shrinking as fluid leaves cells. Confusion worsens, your tongue swells, cracking like dried leather. Swallowing becomes impossible. The headache feels like ice picks driven through your temples. Classic symptoms of severe dehydration, amplified by hypothermia into pure agony. Even morning dew is absent here. The extreme cold and low humidity mean atmospheric moisture deposits as hoarfrost, not collectible water. Ice Age humans knew when and where dew formed, how to collect it with absorbent materials. You wouldn't recognize dew conditions if they occurred, which they won't. Your body's water regulation has completely failed. The hypothalamus, governing thirst and temperature, malfunctions below 88 degrees Fahrenheit. You might not even feel thirsty anymore. A lethal irony. Severe dehydration masks itself as hypothermia worsens. You could be dying of thirst without knowing it. The search for water would have driven Ice Age migrations. Bands followed seasonal melt patterns, memorized the location of hot springs that never froze, understood how permafrost created perched water tables. They carried mental maps spanning thousands of square miles. You can't remember which direction you crawled from 5 minutes ago. A hallucination flickers. A pristine mountain stream. Clear water burbling over stones. Your dying brain constructs fantasies from stored memories. But touching your cracked lips to that imaginary water snaps you back. There's only ice, always ice. Ice that would kill you faster than the thirst itself. Modern humans drink 8 glasses daily from infinite sources. Your ancestors might find liquid water once every 3 days, collecting it in auroch bladders, rationing every drop. They developed biological adaptations, more efficient kidneys, better water retention. You're built for abundance, dying in scarcity. The final insult: your tears would freeze before they could fall. But you're too dehydrated to cry anyway. In the last glacial maximum, even grief was a luxury biology couldn't afford. Your stomach cramped last around hour 3, then went ominously silent. Now, 5 hours into your Ice Age nightmare, your body has begun consuming itself. Autophagy, cellular self-cannibalism, kicks in when blood glucose crashes. Your muscles are eating themselves to keep your brain alive. But in the last glacial maximum, even cannibalism isn't enough. The landscape appears barren as Mars. During glacial maximum, plant biomass dropped by 50% globally. The diverse forests of warmer periods, gone, replaced by Mammoth steppe, a frozen grassland where 90% of vegetation lay dormant underground as roots and tubers. Even if you knew which plants were edible, the permafrost laughs at your bleeding fingers. Your ancestors needed 4,500 calories daily just to maintain body temperature. That's a full mammoth steak every day, forever. You burned through your last glucose reserves 2 hours ago. Your liver's emergency glycogen, gone. Now your body strips amino acids from muscle tissue, converting protein to sugar through gluconeogenesis. You're literally wasting away in fast forward. A movement catches your eye. Arctic hare. No, your hallucinating brain invented it. Real prey animals in the LGM were massive, dangerous, and impossibly elusive. Reindeer migrated in herds 10,000 strong, but following routes learned over generations. Mammoth family groups had matriarchs with 60 years of landscape memory. You can't even track your own footprints in the snow. The hunger transcends physical pain. Your hypothalamic feeding centers scream for nutrients while your prefrontal cortex shuts down from glucose deprivation. Decision-making deteriorates. Risk assessment fails. This is why starving predators become desperately dangerous, and why starving humans make fatal mistakes. Ice Age hunting required technologies you can't comprehend. Clovis points, those iconic fluted spearheads, took master craftsmen hours to create. Each required specific stone, precise pressure flaking, understanding of fracture mechanics. Even with a perfect point, you'd need a spear shaft, seasoned wood, straightened over months, hafting materials, sinew, pine pitch, hide glue, and throwing skills developed from childhood. Your ancestors hunted in coordinated groups. They built drive lanes from stone cairns, funneling herds over cliffs. They knew seasonal movements, feeding patterns, escape behaviors. They could identify individual animals, predict weather from their behavior, interpret subtle signs modern humans never notice. You'd miss a mammoth standing 50 feet away in this visibility. Plant foods offered no salvation. The few edible plants required processing knowledge bordering on alchemy. Toxic roots needed specific preparation, freezing, thawing, leaching, fermenting. Bitter vetch seeds required days of water processing to remove neurotoxins. One mistake meant convulsions, paralysis, death. Your ancestors knew every plant's seasonal toxicity levels. You can't identify a single species. The irony sears. You're surrounded by food you can't access. Those microscopic organisms in the soil, bacteria and fungi containing proteins, the sparse lichens on rocks, technically edible after processing, bone marrow in ancient carcasses scattered across the tundra, nutritious if you could crack them open, but accessing any requires tools, knowledge, and physical capabilities you've already lost. Your metabolic rate plummets. Adaptive starvation response trying to stretch non-existent resources. But this also drops your body temperature faster. Catch 22. Eat nothing and freeze, or burn calories hunting you don't have for food you can't catch with skills you never learned using tools you can't make. A final torture. Your nose, evolved to detect food at distances, becomes hyperacute during starvation. You smell everything, the musk of distant animals, the faint sweetness of frozen berries under snow, even the ketones from your own muscle breakdown. Your body's last cruel joke, forcing awareness of food you'll never reach. The LGM wasn't empty, it teemed with calories locked behind barriers of horn, hide, tusk, and permafrost. Your ancestors spent 50,000 years developing keys to these locks. You're trying to break in barehanded while your body eats itself alive. In the end, starvation in the Ice Age isn't about food scarcity. It's about the vast gulf between available calories and accessible calories. That gulf is measured in generations of accumulated knowledge. You have 5 hours of accumulated failure, and your muscle tissue tastes like despair. 6 hours. Core temperature 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Your naked skin has transcended pain into something worse. Cellular death you can feel. Frostbite claimed your extremities hours ago, but now deep tissue freezing advances into your core. Without clothing, the last glacial maximum peels you apart layer by microscopic layer. The mathematics of heat loss are brutally simple. Naked human skin loses heat at 40 watts per square meter in still air at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. At minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit with 80 miles per hour winds, you're hemorrhaging 400 watts per square meter. Your body generates maybe 100 watts at rest. You're a thermal bankruptcy accelerating towards zero. Ice Age clothing wasn't simple animal skins draped over shoulders. Archaeological evidence reveals sophisticated tailored garments rivaling modern technical wear. The Sungear burial site preserved a 28,000-year-old outfit decorated with 3,500 mammoth ivory beads. Each bead took an hour to make. That's 3,500 hours of work for decoration alone. The clothing itself, exponentially more complex. Your ancestors wore 5-layer systems, inner layers of birdskin with feathers facing inward, middle insulation from hollow shaft caribou hair, outer shells of windproof seal intestine or tightly woven mammoth hair. Each layer trapped air, creating thermal gradients. Seams were double sewn with sinew, sealed with pine pitch, reinforced at stress points. You couldn't create a single component with functional hands, let alone while dying. The eyed needle, invented 40,000 years ago, revolutionized human survival. These weren't crude bone splinters, but precision instruments. Creating one required selecting specific bone density, patient grinding with sandstone, drilling sub-millimeter holes with flint microdrills. Each needle represented days of skilled work. Ice Age tailors owned needle kits like modern surgeons guard instruments. Footwear complexity defies modern comprehension. Ice Age boots use differential materials, soft scraped hide interiors, insulating grass or fur layers, waterproof exterior shells, anti-slip sole attachments. Some incorporated ice cleats from carved antler. Construction required dozens of pattern pieces, each fitted precisely. Your frostbitten feet, bleeding and swollen, would need custom sizing, impossible without patterns passed down through generations. Thread itself was technology. Sinew required harvesting from specific tendons, careful separation into fibers, precise drying, proper storage. Plant fibers needed harvesting at exact growth stages, retting processes, spinning techniques. Even with materials present, creating thread strong enough for clothing would take days. You have minutes. Tanning hides, the foundation of Ice Age clothing, required chemistry bordering on magic. Brain tanning used lecithin from neural tissue to break down collagen fibers. Smoke tanning required specific wood combinations. Urine tanning needed precise ammonia concentrations. Each method took weeks, produced different qualities, required different skills. Raw hide would freeze solid, crack, and disintegrate. You need processed materials that don't exist. The cruelest irony: you're surrounded by potential clothing materials. That frozen wolf carcass 50 yards away has fur worth killing for. The scattered mammoth bones contain sinew in their joints. Those scrubby plants poking through snow could yield fibers, but accessing any requires tools you don't have, skills you never learned, and time that's already gone. Modern humans shed clothing casually, complaining about tags and seams. Your ancestors knew clothing as sacred technology, the barrier between human and corpse. They decorated garments with clan symbols, passed techniques through apprenticeships, innovated constantly against evolution's coldest challenge. Your skin, evolved for African heat dissipation, has become your executioner. Each square inch bleeds warmth into the Arctic night. Blood vessels that should constrict have given up. Cellular metabolism continues its futile heat generation, like burning furniture while the house collapses. As hypothermia enters its final stages, a strange warmth floods your body. Paradoxical undressing, the terminal symptom where dying humans strip off clothing, convinced they're overheating. But you have no clothing to remove, just skin turning blue-black as blood pools in failing capillaries. In the last glacial maximum, naked meant dead. Not eventually, not probably, immediately and inevitably. Your ancestors understood this with religious certainty. They made clothing before tools, before art, before any luxury, because in a world of ice and wind and death, clothing wasn't fashion. It was the technology that separated human from meat. And you're on the wrong side of that divide, wearing only frostbite and failure. The hallucinations started an hour ago. Voices calling your name, shadow figures just beyond vision. Your dying brain, starved of glucose and oxygen, creates phantom companions. Because even in its final moments, the human mind cannot accept the truth of Ice Age isolation. Alone means dead. You've survived 6 hours through biological miracles and stupid luck. But the last glacial maximum measured survival in generations, not hours. And generations required something you catastrophically lack: other humans. Ice Age bands typically numbered 25 to 50 individuals, not by choice, but by mathematical necessity. Fewer meant genetic bottlenecks, knowledge loss, and insufficient labor. More meant resource depletion and social collapse. Your ancestors spent 50,000 years perfecting this balance. You're a band of one. The math is already terminal. Watch a modern human try to start fire alone. Now imagine doing everything alone. Hunting mammoths, minimum 8 coordinated adults, processing a kill, 12 hours of continuous labor before spoilage, building shelters. The measure-rich mammoth bone huts required 20 people working in sequence. Guard duty against predators. Someone awake every hour, forever. Alone, you can't even sleep safely. Knowledge transmission defined Ice Age survival more than physical fitness. A master flint knapper spent decades learning, more decades teaching. Botanical knowledge, which plants, when, where, how to process, pass through maternal lines. Hunting strategies accumulated across centuries of observation. One break in transmission meant permanent loss. You're not just alone. You're a library burning in the snow. The psychological destruction compounds physically. Humans evolved as hypersocial primates. Isolation triggers cascade failures, cortisol spikes suppressing immune function, disrupted circadian rhythms, cognitive decline. Studies on modern isolation show measurable brain damage within days. Ice Age isolation, compounded by mortal terror, your sanity would shatter before your body. Division of labor wasn't luxury, but necessity. While hunters pursued game, others maintained fires, prepared tools, processed earlier kills, gathered plants, tended children, manufactured clothing. Each task required full-time specialization. You're trying to be hunter, gatherer, toolmaker, navigator, medic, and guard simultaneously. It's like playing every position in football while running the scoreboard. Collective memory outweighed individual intelligence. Bands remembered where great-grandfather found water during the drought of 43. They knew which valleys trapped cold air, where bears denned, when berries ripened at different elevations. Thousands of place names, each encoding survival information. You can't even remember which direction you came from. The medicine man Tosha woman role reveals social sophistication. Broken bones needed setting. Impossible solo. Infected wounds required drainage, herbal treatment, monitoring. Childbirth. Forget it. Ice Age midwifery required multiple assistants, accumulated knowledge, and immediate postpartum support. A pregnant woman alone was a death sentence written 9 months in advance. Shared body heat might seem primitive until you calculate the physics. 5 humans huddled together lose 50% less heat than 5 separated individuals. Ice Age sleeping arrangements weren't about modesty, but thermal efficiency. Family groups slept in precise configurations, maximizing surface contact. You're radiating heat into empty space where warm bodies should be. Even successful hunting meant nothing alone. A solo human might miraculously kill a reindeer. Then what? Field dressing requires multiple people to prevent spoilage. Carrying meat attracts predators you can't fight while burdened. Processing hide, extracting sinew, breaking bones for marrow. All require tools and time you don't have while guarding the carcass. Language itself evolved for Ice Age cooperation. Not just communication, but rapid information transfer about dynamic, dangerous environments. Bear tracks heading toward the water source contains survival-critical data. Your last words will be wasted on wind and predators who don't care about human speech. Status in Ice Age bands derive from contribution, not dominance. The best tracker, the steadiest firekeeper, the woman who could predict weather, all held survival-critical roles. Losing any meant diminished group survival. You're trying to be every specialist simultaneously. It's not heroic, it's mathematically impossible. Your final realization as consciousness fragments, the last glacial maximum didn't kill individuals. It killed failed groups. Every skeleton archaeologists find represents not personal failure, but social collapse. The Gravettians, Solitrians, and Magdalenians survived through hyper-cooperation refined to art. You survived 6 hours through pure individual grit, but the Ice Age counted survival in centuries, and centuries required something more than personal toughness. They required us, plural. Together. You have only you, singular, alone, already past tense. 7 hours in, your brain operates at 15% capacity. But even at full strength, your modern mind contains precisely 0 survival knowledge for the last glacial maximum. The gap between what you know and what you need isn't just wide. It's measured in millennia of accumulated wisdom, now hemorrhaging from your dying neurons like heat from your skin. Your ancestors' children learned to identify over 200 plant species before they could properly walk. By adolescence, they could track 30 different animals by scat alone. predict weather from cloud formations, navigate by star positions obscured by ice fog. This wasn't trivia, it was the operating system for survival, installed from birth through constant immersion. Your brain runs modern software, useless apps in a Stone Age world. Consider flint napping. YouTube videos make it look simple. Reality, master nappers trained for decades. They understood cryptocrystalline structures, shockwave propagation through stone, platform preparation angles. Each stone type required different techniques. Obsidian fractures differently than chert differently than quartzite. The margin between a useful tool and worthless shards, millimeters and microseconds of applied force. We found rocks earlier, tried banging them together, produced nothing but noise and bloody fingers. Because you don't know that flint needs specific moisture content, that coarse stones require preparation strikes to create proper platforms, that the angle of percussion determines flake propagation, that your hammerstone needs particular density, 50,000 years of accumulated knowledge, and you're trying to recreate it through random violence. Navigation knowledge alone would break your modern mind. Ice Age humans memorized landscapes that changed seasonally. Summer landmarks vanished under winter snow. Rivers appeared and disappeared. Mountain passes opened and closed. They navigated by subtle cues. The way snow accumulated on specific slopes, how wind patterns shifted around invisible topography, which stars appeared between cloud breaks at exact locations. You can't even determine cardinal directions anymore. The sun barely rises, hovering at the horizon when visible. Magnetic compasses would be useless near the polar regions. Stars hide behind perpetual ice crystal haze. Your ancestors navigated by reading the landscape like text, each subtle feature a word in a story spanning generations. You were literate in the language of survival. Seasonal timing governed everything. When did specific plants become toxic? Which moon marked caribou migrations? How many days after first thaw before river crossings became deadly? This wasn't calendar knowledge, but deep pattern recognition, reading environmental cues modern humans never notice. The smell of soil changes, the way ice sounds different before breaking, how animals behave before weather shifts. Medicine required encyclopedic botanical knowledge. Which lichens fought infection? How to prepare willow bark for pain without overdosing? What fungus stopped bleeding? Dosages varied by season, patient age, what other foods were consumed. One plant might be medicine in spring, neutral in summer, poison in fall. Your ancestors carried pharmaceutical databases in their heads. You can't identify a single medicinal plant. Tool maintenance knowledge seems mundane until you need it. Stone tools, dull. Resharpening requires understanding edge geometry, pressure flaking techniques, when to abandon and remake. Hide clothing stretches when wet, shrinks when dry. Treatments varied by animal, season killed, intended use. Sinew thread weakens predictably, bone needles wear at stress points. Everything required constant attention with specific knowledge. Social knowledge mattered as much as practical skills. Which bands could be trusted? What gifts showed respect versus insult? How to approach strangers without triggering violence? Accent patterns that revealed homeland and intentions. Story traditions encoding navigation routes, hunting grounds, seasonal patterns. Lose the stories, lose the survival manual. The abstract knowledge might be worst. Understanding that knowledge itself was fragile, required active preservation. Ice Age humans developed memory techniques, created physical mnemonics, embedded information in art. They knew knowledge could die with individuals, so they distributed it, reinforced it, celebrated it. You never even knew what you didn't know. Your modern education, years of formal schooling, taught you nothing about reading ice formation patterns, identifying edible lichens, predicting weather from scent changes. You learned abstractions while they learned specifics. You memorized facts while they internalized processes. You prepared for tests while they prepared for tomorrow's blizzard. As your brain shuts down, a final irony. You're probably within walking distance of food, water, shelter materials, but the knowledge to recognize and access them died with the last Ice Age bands. What remains is landscape illegible to modern minds, resources invisible to untrained eyes, solutions unreachable by educated ignorance. The last glacial maximum didn't just test human bodies, it tested human knowledge systems. The elaborate traditions, teaching methods and memory techniques weren't primitive customs, but sophisticated information technology. The software for survival transmitted mouth to ear across millennia. Your hardware trying to run without an operating system, and in the Ice Age, that's a fatal error with no reboot. The cut on your heel from hour 1 has transformed into a highway for death. That small gash, ignored in your desperate survival scramble, now weeps pus tinged pink with blood. Without antibiotics, without even basic wound care, infection spreads through tissue made vulnerable by hypothermia. In the last glacial maximum, every injury was potentially fatal. Every illness, a death sentence punctuated only by how long you suffered first. Your immune system, evolved for modern threats, meets ancient bacteria with catastrophic results. Clostridium perfringens, gas gangrene, thrives in deep puncture wounds, producing toxins that liquefy muscle tissue. The smell reaches your nostrils now, sweet, rotten, the scent of flesh decomposing while still attached. Ice Age humans knew this smell meant amputation or death. You don't even recognize it as your own body rotting. The hypothermia compromises everything. White blood cell production crashes below 85 degrees Fahrenheit core temperature. Wound healing requires inflammation responses your chilled body can't mount. Blood clotting factors fail in the cold. That heel wound bleeds slowly but continuously, each drop irreplaceable. Without food or water, your body can't fight infection and hypothermia simultaneously. It's choosing hypothermia as the gentler death. A tooth abscess would have killed you by day 3. Ice Age humans suffered horrible dental health after agriculture, but even hunter-gatherers faced cracked teeth from using them as tools. One cavity reaching the pulp meant infection spreading to the jaw, the sinuses, potentially the brain. No root canals, no antibiotics, just increasing agony until sepsis provided merciful release. Parasites inhabited every water source, every undercooked meal, every contact with soil. Trichinella from bear meat, causing muscles to calcify. Echinococcus from wolves, forming cysts throughout organs. Intestinal worms competing for nutrients you couldn't spare. Ice Age humans developed partial immunity through constant exposure. Your pristine modern gut would be overwhelmed within days. Even minor injuries cascaded into death. A sprained ankle meant reduced mobility, meant unsuccessful hunting, meant starvation weakening immunity, meant opportunistic infections finishing the job. Ice Age skeletons show healed breaks, evidence of splinting and care. But they also show unhealed injuries, infections that consumed bone, deaths from what modern medicine considers trivial wounds. Your skin, already dying from frostbite, cracks at every joint. Each fissure invites infection. Staphylococcus aureus, present on all human skin, turns lethal when it penetrates deeper. Without soap, without clean water, without even basic understanding of germ theory, you're cultivating bacterial colonies that view your dying tissue as prime real estate. Plant medicines existed but required precise knowledge. Willow bark for pain, but which species, what dose, how prepared? Too little, no effect. Too much, fatal bleeding as salicylates prevent clotting. Fungal antibiotics grew on specific trees. But misidentification meant liver failure. Your ancestors learned through generations of fatal trials. You'd die from the first error. Vitamin deficiencies would claim you within months. Scurvy from lack of vitamin C. Your teeth loosening, old wounds reopening, hallucinations increasing. Pellagra from niacin deficiency, the 4 Ds. Diarrhea, dermatitis, dementia, death. Rickets twisting children's bones without vitamin D. Ice Age humans knew which organs contained which nutrients, ate them raw when necessary. You don't even know liver contains vitamin A. The psychological toll of untreated illness can't be overstated. That infected wound doesn't just hurt, it terrifies. Watching your own flesh rot, smelling your decay, knowing death approaches with each heartbeat. No hope of treatment, no understanding of disease process. Just increasing agony and the certainty of abandonment once you couldn't keep up with the band. Pregnancy would be a death sentence. Ice Age women faced 5 to 10% mortality per birth. Breech presentations, hemorrhaging, infections, all untreatable. Infant mortality exceeded 50%. Those who survived did so through tribal knowledge accumulated over millennia. Midwives who knew which herbs induce contractions, how to manually turn babies, when to choose mother over child. You'd die screaming for help that didn't exist, but perhaps mercy lives in the mathematics. Your infected heel, spreading sepsis through your bloodstream, races against hypothermia to claim you first. Your body temperature now reads 83 degrees Fahrenheit. Confusion prevents you from caring about the streaks of red climbing your leg, the fever that can't manifest because you're too cold to mount one. In the last glacial maximum, medicine wasn't pills and procedures. It was prevention through knowledge, treatment through tradition, and acceptance that most injuries meant death. Your ancestors survived through meticulous care, social support, and accumulated wisdom. You're dying from a cut that modern medicine would treat with basic first aid, but in this world, basic first aid required advanced knowledge you never learned. Because you never imagined needing it. Because you forgot that for 99% of human history, a small cut could mean a large grave. 8 hours. Core temperature 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Your mind isn't just dying, it's disintegrating in ways that would fascinate psychologists if any were here to observe. The last glacial maximum didn't just test human bodies. It tortured human minds in ways modern psychology can barely comprehend. The hallucinations have evolved from simple shadows to full theatrical productions. Your mother stands there, young as you remember from childhood, beckoning toward warmth that doesn't exist. Dead friends chat casually about tomorrow's plans. Your brain, starved of glucose and oxygen, fires random neurons like a computer hard drive fragmenting. Each false image more convincing than reality because reality has become incomprehensible. Temporal displacement hits in waves. Are you 8 hours or 8 years into this ordeal? Did that wolf attack happen moments or months ago? Your hippocampus, critical for forming new memories, shuts down below 85 degrees Fahrenheit. You're living in an eternal present, composed of fragments from your past. Time loses meaning when you can't remember its passage. The isolation has triggered what psychologists call prison psychosis. But worse, solitary confinement in a cell still provides walls, routine, the knowledge that other humans exist somewhere. Here, the emptiness is absolute. No walls means no boundaries between self and void. Your ego dissolves at the edges, unable to maintain cohesion without social mirrors to reflect your existence. Ice Age humans developed sophisticated psychological defenses we've lost. Ritual behaviors that provided control illusions in uncontrollable environments. Spiritual frameworks explaining suffering, promising reunion with ancestors. Social roles that gave meaning to individual struggle. You have none of these cognitive shields. Just raw consciousness confronting its own extinction. The terror compounds exponentially, not just death, everyone faces that, but dying alone, unmourned, your story ending mid-sentence with no one to speak the epilogue. Ice Age bands held elaborate death rituals, ensuring continuity beyond individual existence. Your death will be an event without witnesses, a tree falling in an empty forest of ice. Paradoxical undressing begins its final assault on rationality. Your dying brain, thermoregulation completely failed, interprets nerve damage as burning heat. The urge to tear off clothes you don't have becomes overwhelming. You claw at your own skin, trying to remove garments that exist only in neural misfires. Ice Age humans recognize this behavior, restrained the dying. You'll die believing you're on fire while freezing solid. Decision fatigue reached critical mass hours ago. Every choice, which direction to crawl, whether to keep eyes open, how to position dying limbs, depletes cognitive resources you don't have. Ice Age humans distributed decision-making across the band. Elders chose campsites, specialists directed hunts, consensus governed major choices. You're a committee of one making parliamentary procedures while the building burns. The third man syndrome kicks in, that documented phenomenon where dying humans sense invisible companions. Antarctic explorers, mountaineers, extreme survival situations all report the same presence. Your brain creates phantom helpers, advisors who whisper wrong directions with absolute confidence. Following their guidance leads deeper into danger, but refusing feels like abandoning your only friends. Language disintegrates. First, the complex words vanish. You can't remember hypothermia, just cold sick. Then grammar collapses. Subject-verb relationships scramble. Finally, only primal sounds remain. Groans, whimpers. The linguistic devolution from Homo sapiens to base animal completed in 8 hours. Your last words won't be profound. They'll be pre-verbal. Childhood memories surface with hallucinogenic clarity. Your 5th birthday party. Learning to ride a bike. Christmas morning, decades past. The dying brain, like a computer transferring files before shutdown, replays core memories with desperate intensity. But these aren't comfort, they're torture. Each happy memory highlights the relationships you'll never see again, experiences that die with you. Your sense of self, that narrative continuous I, connecting past to present, fragments like ice. Are you the modern human who woke here? The child in those memories? The ancestor whose genes you carry? Identity requires cognitive coherence your dying neurons can't maintain. You're becoming everything and nothing, all times and no time. The irony burns through the confusion. Your sophisticated modern mind, capable of abstract thought and complex planning, makes dying worse. An animal accepts, you comprehend. Every failed strategy, missed opportunity, approaching inevitability. Consciousness itself becomes torture when it can only observe its own extinction. But the cruelest trick, brief moments of clarity. The fog lifts for seconds, showing your situation in devastating detail. Alone, dying, no hope, no rescue, no meaning. Then merciful confusion returns, but those clear moments leave scars on whatever remains of your psyche. Ice Age humans sang death songs, performed final rituals, faced endings within cultural frameworks evolved over millennia. They died as part of something larger. You're dying as isolated neurons firing in meat, soon to be frozen. The psychological breaking point isn't a moment, it's this entire experience. Consciousness itself rebels against comprehending its own cessation in such absolute isolation. Your mind doesn't just die in the last glacial maximum, it shatters first. The dying is almost mercy after that. 9 hours. You're minutes from death, but let's pause your agony to marvel at what you failed to become. Because 20,000 years ago, your direct ancestors didn't just survive the last glacial maximum, they thrived in it. They danced where you crawled, they sang where you screamed. They built entire civilizations on ice that broke you in 9 hours. Start with children. Ice Age kids began survival training before they could walk. Strapped to their mothers' backs, they absorbed 10,000 hours of observational learning by age 5. Which berries to pick, how weather smelled before storms, the rhythm of flint napping. By 10, they could build fires in blizzards, track rabbits through snow, identify 200 plus useful plants, not prodigies. Just normal kids in an education system where failure meant death. Social structures engineered for survival perfection. Bands of 25 to 50 weren't random, they were calculated. Smaller groups lacked genetic diversity and skill specialization, larger ones depleted local resources. Leadership was situational. The best tracker led hunts, the weather predictor chose travel days, the plant expert guided gathering. Ego-driven leadership meant extinction. Competence hierarchies meant survival. Knowledge preservation surpassed modern systems. Without writing, they developed memory techniques that modern neuroscience barely understands. Songs encoding migration routes, dances mimicking animal behaviors, stories containing pharmaceutical instructions, hand gestures preserving napping sequences. Information survives centuries through redundant storage in multiple minds, refreshed through constant retelling. Their clothing rivaled modern technical gear. A Gravettian winter outfit involved. Undergarments from bird skins, feathers inward, insulating layers from hollow shaft caribou hair, windproof shells from sea mammal intestines, and outer decorative layers showing clan affiliation. Seams were welted, double sewn with sinew, sealed with pine pitch. Repairs happened daily because clothing equaled life. Toolkits were portable factories. A typical hunter carried primary spear, backup spear, knife kit, 3 to 5 specialized blades, fire kit, bow drill, tinder bundle, char cloth, sewing kit, needles, awl, sinew, cordage materials, spare point blanks, napping tools, hide for quick repairs, and wound treatment supplies. 20 pounds of gear representing thousands of hours of manufacture. Hunting strategies that modern military tacticians would admire. Persistence hunting, exploiting humans' superior cooling through sweating. Drive lanes built over generations, funneling herds predictably. Ambush sites chosen for acoustic properties. They understood animal psychology better than the animals themselves. A mammoth hunt wasn't violence. It was choreographed symphony. Fire mastery went beyond starting flames. They created specialized fires. Hot fires for warmth, dense hardwoods. Smoke fires for preservation, green wood, specific leaves. Signal fires, materials producing colored smoke. Ritual fires, aromatic woods for ceremonies. Fire temperature controlled within 50 degrees through fuel selection. Banking techniques kept embers alive for days during travel. Nutrition optimization that modern dietitians study. They knew which organs contained which vitamins. Eating them raw when cooking destroyed nutrients. Bone marrow provided fats. Blood gave iron. Partially digested stomach contents of herbivores supplied fermented plant nutrients. Nothing wasted. Everything consumed in specific orders for maximum absorption. Seasonal eating patterns prevented deficiency diseases. Navigation systems rivaling GPS. Star knowledge included pre-session adjustments. They knew stars shifted over generations. Landscape reading incorporated seasonal changes. Mental maps spanning thousands of miles. Updated continuously, shared between bands. They navigated storms where visibility dropped to meters. You got lost on clear ground. Social cohesion through shared hardship. Initiation rituals created psychological resilience. Coming-of-age ceremonies involved controlled exposure to death, vision quests, isolation trials, painful ordeals, not cruelty, but inoculation. Facing death in controlled circumstances prepared minds for facing it real. They built anti-fragility into their children. Art wasn't luxury, but necessity. Cave paintings encoded hunting instructions. Venus figurines standardized ideal body types for surviving famines. Musical instruments maintained group synchrony during long winters. Decorated tools carried owner identification across trade networks. Beauty and function intertwined because morale affected survival as much as calories. The greatest innovation, transforming individual weakness into collective strength. A band of 50 contained redundant specialists. Lose your best hunter. 3 apprentices ready. Medicine woman dies. Her daughter and sister carry the knowledge. They built resilience through overlap, ensuring no single death could break the survival chain. This is what you competed against, not primitive cave dwellers, but sophisticated engineers of survival. They looked at the last glacial maximum and saw not apocalypse, but opportunity, where you found only death. They built cultures that seeded every corner of Earth. Your 9-hour ordeal, their children could have saved you while playing, because they weren't built different. They were built correctly. Through generations of transmitted wisdom, refined techniques, and absolute dedication to collective survival. You thought individual toughness mattered. They knew only the group survived. You brought modern arrogance to an ancient exam. They brought 50,000 years of accumulated answers. Core temperature, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The boundary between life and death blurs like ice fog. Your heart, that faithful muscle that's beaten 400,000 times during this ordeal, staggers between rhythms. Ventricular fibrillation lurks 1 degree away, but your nervous system has mercy now. You can't feel the pain anymore. Can't feel anything. The last glacial maximum has won, and your body knows it even if your mind refuses acceptance. The short-faced bear found you an hour ago. It didn't attack. Didn't need to. It simply followed, patient as geology, watching your crawl slow from desperate to pathetic to stationary. Now, it sits 20 feet away, massive head tilted with what might be curiosity, or hunger. You'll never know because your eyes can't focus anymore. Everything is shapes and shadows and the growing darkness that starts from the periphery. Your blood moves like slush through constricted vessels. Cellular metabolism has slowed to near zero. ATP production, the basic energy currency of life, has ceased in your extremities. Your fingers and toes aren't just frostbitten now, they're necrotic. Dead tissue still attached to dying flesh. Even if rescue came, and it won't, amputation would be mandatory. Multiple amputations. But that's tomorrow's problem, and you don't have tomorrow. The infected wound on your heel has become systemic. Sepsis races hypothermia to claim victory. Your body can't mount a fever response. Too cold for that. Instead, bacteria multiply unopposed through your bloodstream. The sweet smell of gas gangrene mingles with the metallic scent of blood from your cracked lips. You're decomposing before death, a process that usually waits for afterward. Memory becomes dream, becomes hallucination, becomes nothing. Your mother calls from the kitchen. Dinner's ready. But the kitchen is a mammoth bone hut. Your first girlfriend laughs, but her face is a saber-toothed cat. Time isn't just fluid, it's gaseous, expanding and contracting without pattern. You're 5 years old. You're 50. You're everyone and no one. Your breathing sounds wrong. Cheney-Stokes respiration, clusters of rapid breaths followed by terrifying pauses. Your brainstem, that ancient autopilot, struggles with basic functions. Inhale. Forget to exhale. Remember. Panic. Inhale too fast. Your chest sounds wet. Pulmonary edema as fluid fills your lungs. Drowning in your own body while surrounded by frozen water you couldn't drink. The bear stands, stretches, begins a casual approach. No hurry, it recognizes the signs better than you do. Your scent has changed from fear sweat to death sweet. Predators know. They've smelled it millions of times across evolutionary history. The transition from prey to carrion, from hunt to harvest. Paradoxical undressing makes its final assault. Your hands claw at invisible clothing, tearing at your own skin. Neural signals completely scrambled. Hot is cold, is pain, is pleasure, is nothing. You're stripping away layers that don't exist while your actual skin peels away in frozen sheets. The bear pauses, confused by behavior that makes no survival sense. Even it recognizes madness. Your last coherent thought isn't profound. It's probably about water, or warmth, or home. Something simple, something impossible. The grand questions, meaning, purpose, legacy, require cognitive functions that shut down hours ago. Philosophy is for the living. The dying think only of breath and heartbeat and the next second that might not come. Cardiac arrest begins gently, a skipped beat, then 2. Your heart, cooled below sustainable function, fires erratically. QRS complexes widening, T-waves disappearing. The electrical system that's coordinated 80 beats per minute for decades finally fails. Not with drama, just stuttering confusion as cells forget their rhythm. The bear's breath fogs the air above you, close enough to touch if you could move. It sniffs cautiously. Even apex predators respect the boundary between living and dead. But that boundary is measured in heartbeats now. 3, 2. The pause between grows longer. Longer. Your pupils, fixed and dilated, reflect nothing. And then, silence. The last glacial maximum claims another victory. Your modern human body, product of 300,000 years of evolution, couldn't survive 9 hours in the world that created it. The bear begins its meal. Dire wolves circle, waiting their turn. By tomorrow, scattered bones. By spring, nothing. Another failed experiment in time travel. Another reminder that we conquered this world not through individual strength, but collective intelligence. You came naked and alone to test yourself against the ice. The ice doesn't care about tests, only results. Time of death. Hour 9, minute 37. Cause, everything. The cold that killed you. The infection that raced it. The predators that waited. The knowledge you lacked. The tools you couldn't make. The fire you couldn't start. The shelter you couldn't build. The water you couldn't drink. The food you couldn't find. The people who weren't there. In the last glacial maximum, death wasn't an event. It was a patient teacher. And you failed every lesson. The bear feeds. The world turns. The ice remains. Welcome to the Stone Age. Population still 0.